Mostly, I've been alone for 30, 40 years. My channel doesn't get many um, visits. It's not a popular channel. Mostly, I live a sad and lonely life as a deaf man. But one thing I am sure is that what I'm putting online is very important material that should be the object of scholars. And this video is about some of the things that happened to me as an object of a organized and brutal mob that should, by government, not have been allowed to operate the way they did. Um, it's a complicated scenario that surrounded me as a result of High Command's arrangements with Ringo Starr and a bundle of letters thick as a brick that were planted on me as a child by a Jewish girl from Israel pretending to be wowed by me. By fabricating the situation, these letters came in 74, 75 when I was 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. And by planting these letters and pretending to find them, what the true authors produced was a situation where they could, in cold blood and broad daylight, organize, execute, release, and effectively process the whole instigation of the AIDS attack while selling it as a satire, using these letters as their alibi, the end of which they poisoned me for life. They've done irreparable harm to me. A bloodthirsty, screaming horde. That was the very word that they were using for themselves. They claimed it was fair to allow the people who claimed they were the victims, but which research shows were the true authors of the letters, to serve as, in their words, judge and jury in the matter. It's really very strange to allow the perpetrators of the AIDS attack to sit in judgment over the victims with a satiric alibi that they were just producing a house of fools. I have a few notes that are scribbled here that help me remind me of some of the flow that I wanted to cover. If I take a minute to study them, it's because my handwriting isn't very good. I'm dealing with carpal tunnel syndrome, and it's um, tragically affected my handwriting. Probably this should be a letter to MIT rather than a video, but it's hard for me to write. Now, nobody recognizes me in the presentation except that they created their ribald satire by attacking me sexually. Administration at the school acted like nothing was wrong. Their agent came on to me, and they knew that Wattenmaker, a neurosurgeon at Pitt, had implanted a neuroplasm. This is how low the city of Pittsburgh is. This is how low High Command is. This is how low Congress is. This is how truly low Ringo Starr is. They implanted a neuroplasm. All the evidence shows that they were subjecting me to slaughtering fusillades of blows at the age of 12, 13 years old. They were becocking me in my sleep when I was 9 years old to make pictures which they sold to Yoko Ono while stealing books from our museums. And all of this is in the records. Everybody knew they were doing this to each other. And they never intervened to defend me. Instead, what they did was that they produced a bowdlerized investigation, making a joke and a satire of a murderously horrible Frankenstein injury that they inflicted by implanting a neuroplasm. And when I began to have seizures, they said we should have to castrate him, which is what they did. 20 years ago, I stopped being able to get natural erections and have been alone ever since, while they made off with the girl I wanted to be married to and used her and constantly cyber attacked me with what a precious plaything she was for them. Constantly. And she knowingly did this to me. She came on to me for the purpose of setting this up. Now, one of the things that's really very violent to the mind about how Yoko Ono's Kremlin operates, because they've harvested an entire lifetime, which they claim is their property, and a movement of pornographic genocide, as all my research shows, is that innocence absolutely stands for nothing. They claimed that I was somehow negligent. I'm not involved. They knew that I had nothing to do with it. They knew I knew nothing about what John Lennon was pulling. And they used that as a metaphor for my claims to have been not in any way involved with Hiroshima. I'm like, for them, I'm like the kid in the glass booth that the Ukrainians can't wait to put to death. They said he pulled the trigger. I didn't even have a, I've never even owned a weapon. But they said that I am a symbol of Lenin's escapade and therefore a symbol of Hiroshima too. And they don't even bother to try to make up their minds about which one it is because they know I had nothing to do with either one of them. But for them, it's good enough. Now, for when this got started, when they pretended to find the letters, they didn't have to look at them. They knew what was in them, but they just said, "Oh, we found these things." They wrote the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, meaning if they were to warn people in 1984, well, they were setting this up even earlier 80s. If they were to warn people that AIDS was an attack, it would have saved lives, but it would have compromised their control over the storyline, and that's a no-no. And they drove a line in the sand where they're going to fight dirty with injection needles. They even wrote that. They're going to fight dirty with monkeypox. They even wrote that they were doing these things, that they were behind the anthrax. They made clear at 911. Over every penny. They drew a line in the sand over every penny and they ripper murdered a completely innocent bystander to underscore that innocence is no claim, that this is about a squabble for control of the money. And they paid their own victims to murder innocent people. They said, look, a job's a job, right? You can't beat us, so join us. We'll at least give you viaticals and give you juicy targets to annihilate and have fun screwing. And so they go out and they murder people. They shoot people dead. They rip or murder people. They poison people. They release COVIDs with the AIDS attackers. And they say, but we're the victims. This is what Seattle Queer has done for decades. Okay, but we're the victims. So, so they were hired by their own assassins to do these dirty things. And this is how Paul McCartney's mind got the better of of any kind of civil decency or any kind of factual history. This is how he did it. So what gives in the script was it tells the story of what was really going on with Sergeant Pepper's, which was that there was a huge montage about Kennedy's murder. They blew his mind out in the car, they said, right? And it was a huge taunt. Beatles came in for control, sovereignty, celestial sovereignty over the mind. They evaporated and washed away all of the public consciousness that Kennedy was working on and said, he's just like Reagan, you ain't the Beatles. And behind the scenes, they were setting up a genocide with Reagan. Hitler's forces and the Beatles were helping all of this and making off with all kinds of money. Mick Jagger was having all kinds of playthings. Well, he was like, "Oh, what's this queer about crying about a marriage for?" We live in a world that's post-marriage, right? And now they want to make clear that everybody has to stick with one man, one woman. That's the secret recipe of the genocide pornographers. Okay, and it's like a loop. If you disagree with that, then you should let us have your girlfriend kill your boyfriend. It's like a loop in their minds, and it works over and over and over and over again as a bypass system in their psyches. So they claim that I was a manifest embarrassment, but what they were doing was hijacking and hotwiring into like our nuclear facilities and giving sovereignty to a Tojo Ronin loyal Japanese woman in the New York City Kremlin. So what they were after was sovereignty. That's what they were doing when they killed JFK. Now, one of their explanations and alibis is that they have like ultra high systems, like they locked up John Hines' landing equipment, and then the people who I had, it could be the reason they did that was because people in Pennsylvania were suspicious of Mount Desert Island, and the British didn't want any questions, so they diverted, you know, animosity and concern. They said, "Well, no, 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 we're not going to question that because these people just killed John Hines." So they bypassed Mount Desert Island, and the people who I had been fighting, the people who set me up, the people who tortured me, the people who castrated me, the people who made off with my broad, were being promoted. And they came on to me and said, "Ever play royalty?" And then killed Princess Diana. And Paul McCartney's syphilitic mind, this was all my doing, had nothing to do with me. If the British were rational, they would have intervened, but the British weren't rational. The only person that matters is Princess Diana. Everybody else can just go. Okay, that's the way they feel about it. And of course, they killed all of these Kennedys. They killed Searcy Kennedy. They killed JFK Jr. Pravanik went there to watch. Well, it has not. It's all syphilis from the Heinz people. It has nothing to do with anything but that landing gear locking up. That's an ultra high system. Now, the National Association for the Mentally Ill and a group called Herder want to shut down the police have all lied and slandered me because they're licky chops because what they want to hear is about ultra high, right? They want to hear that the Beatles actually they not only target the brain, but they can use ultra high to send signals directly into the brain, which Microsoft has helped them develop, this fourth way psychology. And they know I never talk about that, even though I've been subject to it for a long time. I'll explain why I don't talk about it. The Jericho Project are people in prisons who are working with UW Dialectical who helped set this up for all their sad stories, and I believe them. I believe there are innocent people in prison. I believe there are hostages in our prisons. I believe that there's a moral problem in our prisons. I believe all that. For all their sad stories, they allowed their peers to die rather than question the Beatles. I mean, I think it's sick, and I'm not game with it, But what they want to do, the Beatles want to advocate for assholes like Lister, like they call this guy Lister when they poison me in the mouth because it's like Listerine, right? They want to advocate for these assholes because they see a House of Fools being released. Oh, the House of Fools, all the House of Fools. Oh, yes, we do have ultra high. We do have ultra high. Yes, we do. Ooh, go get them, go get them. And they had to promote this song, Attica State. We're all inmates at Attica State. Reality check on this one. The people who are behind this situation was Wattenmaker. He was a psychiatrist and high command at Attica State. He was working very intimately, very in the council with King Crimson when they murdered Martin Luther King, which is one of the crimes that this script testifies to, which is one of John Lennon's crimes before he pulled the fast one of his double fantasy where he was suddenly the king victim. And it gives the British sovereignty over the PlayStation. That's what they're after. So they're actually promoting the most psychotic, fiendish Boris Karloff's Vatican State Prison psychiatry and saying it's to help the schizophrenics. And this is typical of a mind like Yoko Ono and Peter Gabriel sitting down with Lou Reed. How can we overthrow the United States? So, if that's not interesting enough, the dirty fight over a penny is the fingerprint of the assassins. And of course, they're going to gun that. But if they had tried to save lives, they wouldn't be in a position. That's why it's like if you tell people to save their lives, you will be guilty of taking a penny of our investment in from copyright, man, and that's a death sentence. So they made this like all popular some kind of age revenge story, but in reality it's the people who did it, and they're using a pornographic system to pull off the heist, and Congress, oh, don't talk about or don't ever say that Nancy Pelosi didn't wear a bra because that's the slippery slope to Monica Lewinsky stories, you know, and they can't. In other words, they're psychologically incapable of being mature. Psychologically incapable of being mature. They come along with their magic rooms that can sweep away our grannies with COVID-19 because they're psychologically incapable of being mature. They're psychologically incapable of it. The people in Congress are literally psychologically, they come unhinged. They, they, they start running to the bathroom. They start getting up and behaving like Donald Trump. If anybody says the word mature, they flip out. They can't bear the thought of being mature. It makes them crazy. They fall to their feet and begin lapping from the dog bowl if somebody says mature to them. That they can't stand the idea of being mature. It drives them insane. The idea of being mature. They can't think in the presence of maturity.